Hi everyone, and welcome to our series where we interview computer science faculty about their job search and interview experience with the goal to help future faculty candidates better prepare for this process. And today we are here with Nita Char-Dwadkar, who will start as a tenure track assistant professor at UT Austin next year. Nita Char's main research interests are in cloud computing, also at the boundary of systems and machine learning. So with that, welcome and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Manuel, for having me, for showing so much patience in getting me scheduled for this. I'm really excited to be here and I hope to help.
Perhaps as a first question, can you shortly introduce yourself and also your career path?
Sure, yes. I'm basically from India, which is where I did my undergraduate studies in computer engineering at the Government College of Engineering in Pune, India. After that, primarily for family reasons, I took a software development job for a couple of years at a company called Amdocs. And I then went for my master's in computer science at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, generally referred to as IISc. This is where actually I got introduced to research. My master's advisor there, Professor Chiranjeev Bhattacharya, played a key role in motivating me to use my master's as a platform to go deeper in research. But I wasn't super convinced. No one in my family actually had taken this path. So it seemed like a real long commitment with the same advisor and felt terrifying to be in a situation for that long where your advisor could solely decide your fate, I thought. I was very naive, I would say now. And so I again worked in industry for some time, about 2 years again, before I was really convinced that I wanted to do a PhD, be on a path of being an independent researcher. And fortunately, UC Berkeley accepted me. Professor Randy Katz was my advisor. And then for the last couple of years of my PhD, Professor Joseph Gonzalez, co-advised me when he started at Berkeley as an assistant professor. After PhD, I went to Stanford to work with Christos Kozirakis and his group as a postdoc. And next year, as you said, fall of 2022, I will be starting at UT Austin as an assistant professor. This year, I'm going to be spending time with the VMware research group here in Palo Alto.
So that's also as a kind of sabbatical, or?
Yeah, you can call that, yeah. So I deferred by a year and this is what I'm going to do. Things are still sort of in progress. Given visa and everything works out, that's what the recent update is.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I introduced your research in one sentence. Can you also tell us a bit more about it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. As you said, I'm primarily a cloud computing systems researcher with a strong background in machine learning. I started as a machine learning student actually during my master's, and I did a master's thesis where I leveraged machine learning techniques for a problem in storage systems. And since then, I was hooked to this nascent at the time, but really fascinating area of machine learning for systems. I did my PhD dissertation around the use of machine learning driven resource management for the cloud and the data center. I would say the key finding was that, first of all, it is in fact feasible to use machine learning models in making those intricate decisions in dynamically changing environments in cloud and data centers, but also that there are very interesting critical challenges that off-the-shelf machine learning techniques raise in this given context. And my work basically then presents new machine learning algorithms and systemic optimizations to overcome those challenges. Then during my postdoc, in addition to diving deeper into this work of machine learning for systems, I also looked at the reverse direction of building systems for machine learning. My background in machine learning puts me in the right spot to identify systemic requirements of emerging machine learning workloads and helps me build systems that render these advancements in both the emerging new algorithms in machine learning and the hardware accelerators architectures, and making it accessible to everyone in the spectrum of experts to non-experts.
Mm-hmm. And now at VMware, what will you be working on for this gap year? Or it's still open, I guess? Partly?
It's still open. We are discussing different things. Actually, I'm starting these discussions now. There are certain next directions that I already have in mind, but it's not official yet. So thinking about that. But some of the things that I have been working on are building serverless computing platforms for machine learning workloads. I've done some of it, inference serving, for instance, or video analytics as a serverless platform. So I would like to go deeper into overall what inference serving is and what other challenges exist in inference serving. Some of my work has looked into interfaces that need to be changed, but now I want to dive deeper into that and see if there are other challenges apart from, now that we have this kind of what we call model-less interface for inference serving, are there any other challenges? And similarly, all this work actually has taken a different look at serverless computing platforms as they exist. I've worked on building, sort of making applications meet the serverless computing platforms. And I have done this kind of bridging the gap between applications and serverless computing platforms. So now the next step is, what does it really need now that I've done this for a few applications? Can we actually have a general purpose serverless computing platform built? These are some of the thoughts around which I would be probably discussing more with the team there. But yeah, this is still in discussions.
I see. Okay. Yeah, sounds nice. And one question that I also had is, because you will be joining the ECE department at UT Austin, right? Typically, as a European, for example, you might not be aware of the difference, because sometimes there is a ECE department, sometimes there is a CS department, and UT Austin also has both. So what's the difference? And also, did you apply for both of them or only for the ECE department?
Okay, yeah. So, well, primarily, I would say ECE, electrical and computer engineering, as the name suggests, is more engineering focused. But for systems research, we all need to be engineers fundamentally to be able to build those systems, see see that they work at large scale in real life. So from that standpoint, there was not a real difference. There are many plus points actually I saw for a person with CS background to be a professor in ECE department. For instance, for my interdisciplinary research, I believe ECE actually offers opportunities to collaborate closely with hardware experts. That's one example. I mean, you could always collaborate across departments, but being in the same department perhaps allows an easier collaboration platform, I would say, given the hallway conversations, seminars, and such things that can bring faculty members together. This, of course, is more powerful when we are not in this virtual setup. And I truly hope pandemic ends for real very soon. Some of the other differences I would say come from administration point of view. So CS and ECE departments may not be under the same school, as it is true for UT Austin, for instance. And that may manifest in differences in policies. But overall, from where I stand, it did not actually make much of a difference. And I am already seeing a lot of collaboration, joint grant proposal writing happening by faculty members in ECE and CS that I'm also starting to participate now in. And yes, I did apply to both CS and ECE departments. And my recommendation would be that if you think your research aligns with what the department is looking for, definitely apply. In fact, even if the job posting doesn't seem like it aligns exactly with what you are doing or what you want to do in future, apply and leave the rest to the search committee to decide.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, perhaps as a follow-up question, did this influence on how you submitted your application materials? Like, did you point this out, or should you point this out in a cover letter that you're applying to both departments, or yeah, does this not really make a difference? I guess it doesn't, right? Or
I did not. I don't think it makes any difference. And the way I looked at my application was I was still going to be representing me. There are certain aspects that I would want to highlight. For instance, as I said, the kind of work I do is highly interdisciplinary, and I would like to be able to do the full stack kind of research, starting from application level till the low level of hardware, microarchitecture, and so on and so forth. So that was something I highlighted in cover letter at various places if I was finding that kind of a match. More so, I did take a chance to highlight if there was a particular match. So for instance, UT Austin, I think, had a very specific kind of wording that said, we're looking for somebody at the intersection of AI and systems, vertical integration between these two fields and things like that. That was me. I felt, I felt like this is calling out to me. And for such things, I did make more custom changes in my application, more so in cover letter, I would say. But overall, not much of my application material, other statements change based on that. I still said what classes I would teach, and all that remained same. And I did not mention that I was applying to various departments. I do not know if that helps or not. For instance, ECE and CS were not even in the same school. I don't know if there is an interaction. So I did not.
And I mean, you're also doing a postdoc, and people typically talk a lot about the advantages of doing a postdoc, that you get more experience and so on, but there are also disadvantages. Can you perhaps elaborate on this?
Yes, actually, this is something I did ponder over a lot. The question is, the way I thought about this was around this question: what do we need to be a professor, right? And I believe at a bare minimum, one, we need to be able to drive. I need to be able to drive my own research agenda. Two, I need to be able to mentor graduate students, help them become independent researchers over the course of their PhDs. Three, I think raise funds to be able to do my own research, run my research group, teach, and then finally also mentor undergrad students, enable them to make right choices. I don't think PhD is always the right choice for everybody, but I would like to enable them to make the choice that is right for them going forward. So I would say not everyone gets to do all these 5 things while working on their PhD dissertation, how focused we are, right, in making our PhD work, first of all. So I certainly did some of these 5 things as a grad student, but definitely not all, and not to an extent that I would have wanted. So in the end of my PhD, when I was deciding whether to apply now or what my next step should be, I didn't quite feel ready then. And a position in academia has a lot of power, I think you would agree. And I wanted to ensure I can contribute in building the next generation of researchers or engineers. And with that, actually, the end result was I, in fact, did a 3-year postdoc. So some of the final positive points for doing a postdoc, I would say, are getting to work with junior grad students, mentoring undergrads, I think chance to expand the work beyond a PhD dissertation, teaching a class, helping PIs write grant proposals. And I'm grateful that I actually got to do all these in my postdoc to some capacity. It definitely reinforced my lean towards academia, definitely. And I think it was needed. For me, that was needed. And as you rightly pointed out, well, I just talked about all the positives. I wasn't always convinced that it surely helps to do a postdoc. The bar for a faculty candidate with a postdoc experience is definitely higher than someone with a fresh PhD. And that causes a lot of stress, I would say, going into a postdoc. What do I need to do? I was talking to many people. What do I need to do? What should my postdoc, what is a successful postdoc look like? And all that. And it was a lot of pressure to start with. But then I actually saw a great opportunity in working with Christos Kozirakis at Stanford. His and his group's research definitely aligned very well with mine. And I believe it was the only way I could have been in the right spot, right position to absorb some of his philosophy going forward. I don't know how otherwise would I have gotten that kind of a chance. So my postdoc was a great continuation. And it should be, postdoc should be a great continuation of the training I was receiving as a grad student. As a grad student, I focused on training myself to be an independent researcher over time with the help of my advisors. While as a postdoc, I got the opportunity to engage with students and help them in any way I could to reach their independence. You would agree, I think, again, that it feels like a huge responsibility to drive research for someone else's thesis, dissertation, deciding how the next few months or years of their life are going to look like. And this all becomes even more challenging given the randomness in academia and the randomness in the process of publications in academia, I would say, and the heavy reliance on them. So postdoc definitely offers a kind of protected or sheltered way to do this, as you have your postdoc advisor sort of looking over your shoulders and course correcting you. So at this point, I am really happy that I made the right choice of doing postdoc. The key things I would say to remember, though, are if you're considering whether to do a postdoc, see if you're able to find an advisor, postdoc advisor, that you find inspiring, can serve as your role model, if you will, and is working in related but not the exact same research problems as you have been during your PhD. And one who has a group of sweetest PhD students is definitely a plus, but you may not always know that in advance. I was fortunate to have that kind of a setup at Stanford.
Okay, yeah, that's great insights. So yeah, and we also already heard your baby in the background, and you also mentioned on Twitter that you were interviewing while you were pregnant, right?
Yes, I did that. And yeah, you would probably hear her around.
Right, and can you give us an overview? I mean, there must be many challenges involved during interviewing. So how does this affect your experience? What kind of challenges did you have to tackle, and how did you tackle them?
Yes, actually, yes, I did interview during my pregnancy, starting from the preparation of the application material to negotiating and deciding on an offer to accept happened over the course of my pregnancy. So the overview is that I was working on my application material during my first trimester. During my second trimester, I was working on my job talk and interviews, and all my interviews happened during my third trimester. Second trimester being the sweetest of three for me, at least generally it is so. In terms of physical and emotional state, gave me a good amount of time to prepare for my job talk and interviews. The first and third trimesters were definitely more challenging. The feeling of being nauseated, the extreme exhaustion without even moving a muscle was new. Fatigue causing me to fall asleep actually on the couch without even realizing, and heartburn keeping me awake at night. And most importantly, the hormones causing a great deal of mood swings. I would say all of this was definitely a lot to deal with, but I think being a tad bit spiritual definitely helped me. Of course, I was very happy and eagerly looking forward to meeting my baby, and that gave me a sort of different perspective. In a way, made me observe things from sort of a detached or zoomed out manner, if you will. And that gave me a strong belief, actually, that it isn't just this time and effort that I'm putting in preparation right now while I'm on the job market, right? And working on my application material or interviewing. But it is all those years, my postdoc, PhD, master's, undergrad, even high school, to what my kindergarten teachers and my parents actually have taught me is going to come together. I definitely encourage this kind of thinking while being on job market. I see so much stress, especially since we have all worked so hard to get there. And then getting an academic job feels like the climax. And the interview process then starts seeming like it is designed for maximizing stress. And stress in general is not good for anyone, but for definitely for somebody pregnant, it can be really harmful. So the belief that I have been working toward this all my life in different small and large ways definitely helped me keep my stress under control. So I really wanted to share that at a philosophical level. But then there are some practical things that I did that helped. One, and to the core of everything, was getting really, really organized. We need to be organized in this whole process, you would agree. It definitely helps in general, but I had to also keep in mind that I will most likely have reduced or limited amount of time. So I had to get focused and make the most out of it. So I meticulously maintained a log of everything, of the places I plan to apply. What did they need in terms of application material? What did the job posting say that sort of felt relevant? When did I start? When did I receive a first email? If there were pre-interviews, how did I track those events, the pre-interview or the full interview, what to expect there, when the full interview would be, who would be on my schedule, and so on and so forth. Everything and anything actually I thought would be helpful in any way was on that spreadsheet. So it got very comprehensive in the end. I was the only one who could make sense out of it, but it was definitely helpful in avoiding all those thoughts that would otherwise be lingering and hovering over my head, causing all the stress and anxiety. So really, really recommend, highly recommend, if you're not already doing that. I assume everyone already does that, but it is important, even if it feels like a lot of time commitment or a lot of time you're spending initially, it gets amortized and actually definitely helps. So I highly encourage doing that. Other kind of practical things that I did was I ensured that I, do ensure that we eat, hydrate, sleep well. That's really, really important, right? My husband, I would like to say, played such a key role in ensuring I was eating and hydrating well throughout. He took over the kitchen all by himself during most of my pregnancy. And I also maintained an exercise routine as much as I could. Well, for me, it was prenatal yoga, right? And which was really, really soothing. I even tried squeezing some of it even on the days of my interviews in my third trimester. So I think you can see how helpful I found them. I'm actually also a dancer. I do Kathak, which is an Indian classical art form that is very athletic. And my dance teacher supported me throughout, and I continued teaching Kathak and dancing with modifications throughout my pregnancy. It's like my happiness mantra. So being able to continue that definitely helped, and it was crucial for me. The other things that were challenging was actually scheduling these pre-interviews and full interviews, keeping in mind my OB visits. So that made it really challenging. But again, I pulled together the calendar in an organized manner, and it was a lot to sort of spend time on initially, but over a period of time, it was sort of paying off. As I said, it amortizes.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot to keep in mind. And that's, yeah, to summarize also, I guess it's very important to have a healthy, like a good kind of attitude, to be very organized, to exercise a lot and stay healthy.
Yeah. I mean, exercise generally otherwise is the first thing you want to throw out of the window as soon as things start becoming, heated and you don't have enough time. But actually, it should be the opposite. When things are starting to feel like that, do spend at least 10 minutes in stretching, if nothing else. Go take a walk. Definitely helps.
Yeah, we talked now about a few general points. So let's continue chatting about the preparation phase. And there the first question is, what were your considerations when applying? Did you, for example, have any kind of personal ranking? Did you use ranking websites, or did you have any geographical kind of constraints and so on?
Yeah, this would probably be a very short answer from my side, because I started by listing countries, then states, and then the schools in those states I would be applying for. I only made a list of schools that I would accept offers from. So that made it easy, I think. This list was mainly based on their geographical locations first, as I said, and then by the ranking of my own sense of how good the school is based on what I had heard from friends who are already working there, or colleagues I have had in the past. So yeah, for me, deciding where to apply was just based on these two things: geographical consideration and how good I thought the school was based on the information I had at hand. That's the best you can do, right? At a given point in time, take decisions based on the most information you have. Yeah.
And for how many institutions did you roughly apply for?
It was also such an uncertain time, as you know. Not many institutions were hiring. And it was very unpredictable compared to even, it is already very unpredictable, but this year was particularly so. So I applied for about 25 schools, I would say. And at some places I did apply for both CS and ECE, depending on the positions they had, the openings they had and the kind of job posting they had posted.
And did you only apply for academic positions or also for industrial research positions, for example?
Yeah, I actually applied for a couple of industrial research positions. I did not actually apply for other industrial positions because I think by now, the kind of career path I've taken, that much clarity I had. Research has to be a crucial component of what I do. So apart from academic positions, I only applied for just 2 industrial research positions, VMware Research being one of those.
And about the application materials, I guess there are many details and many intricacies to think about, but do you have any kind of insights or your advice to for these materials?
Start early. Assume that it is going to take many, many iterations, that each iteration only makes it better. Be okay with starting from scratch for initial few iterations. In fact, this assumption makes it, I think, easy to come up with the first draft. Which otherwise may seem very overwhelming. Assuming that this is only a draft, I think gives something to improve on and doesn't impose the pressure of I have to write the best possible version of each statement, each sentence that I'm writing. There are many guidelines already there, but I just want to say what helped me. Do study what the different statements mean. I did spend quite a bit of time in understanding what each statement actually means, what is expected, what does that mean to me. So for instance, teaching statement doesn't only have to be about teaching. TAing classes during PhD, it doesn't have to be just about that, just teaching or TAing. I think it can really be mentoring junior grad students, undergrads, participating in outreach programs with high school students, for instance, or even helping younger siblings with their studies in many different ways, right, that you can do. So I through this kind of, when I was spending time with these, what the meaning is of these different statements, I realized such things. It was very important. And once again, having spent that time actually writing the material, actually writing those statements, was much faster than otherwise it would have been for me. So definitely, I would say spend that time. The other thing is get feedback from as many people as you can, but make sure to put some thought into who you're asking and how that helps your application. For instance, definitely ask someone who's working on something very closely related to your area of research, but then also ask for someone to read your statements, give you feedback, who's working in completely different department. I think, and you should have this kind of range. That's really something that helped me. I think the point of application material is to convince both the experts and non-experts, and that spectrum, right? So put some thought into who you're asking for feedback. Someone who doesn't actually know anything about your work, hasn't seen any of your work, can in fact give you a great feedback in making it clear what isn't coming across and what needs more explicit explanation, what needs, what kind of jargons that we are, unintentionally putting in there that makes it hard for your statement or for you to reach. The statement is basically representing you, right, in paper format before you actually go to an interview where you can represent yourself. So every statement, every step of this process was like making sure that they read the next step. They called you for an interview, pre-interview, and then they actually called you, and that's how I looked at it. Does this represent me, and what can I do so it does. So I had different groups of people who I asked feedback at different times. That was very helpful. And I think you also asked about job talk, right?
Right. So, in each case, it would be interesting to learn about it.
Well, right. So for job talk, because as I was talking about grouping people, so regarding job talk, let me back off. I think two things, right? Preparing and then actually delivering a job talk. Preparing my job talk, and this may seem very repetitive because I'm sure many of the previous guests and others have talked about this, but a job needs to engage an audience that comprises of the whole of the department you're applying to. So know your audience and study the job post thoroughly and find out about the department, their interview process, anything that you think might actually help you make the connection. Make sure the job talk pulls the audience, members who are not in your exact area of research, but also you're giving something to the experts in terms of key contributions you have made that impresses them. That's, I think, crucial. There are many good resources that talk about this structure, so I'll not talk too much about that. But once you're done, once you have a slide deck, let's say that's ready, practice it a lot. I cannot stress it more. Really, really important. Practice with different audiences again, because once again, put thought into who you're asking to be your audience in your mock talks. Form groups and schedule talks, mock talks with them. Keep some time definitely between those practice talks. Very important. To internalize the feedback and address comments, work on your job talk again, and work on your slides and delivery before going to the next one, so that it actually is helpful. One thing I did was I also practiced the initial few minutes before each interview, which was definitely helpful in getting through the initial stress that may be caused due to many things like technological things or something someone says or does that upsets you for no reason because you're already feeling all the stress, or just because you're nervous at start. So to get over all of these, having the initial few minutes worth of my talk rehearsed has been extremely helpful.
Yeah, that sounds like great advice. And also to chat about interviewing. So you already mentioned that you had to schedule the phone interviews. And did you also have such a phone interview for the visit or for UT Austin?
Yes, I had a pre-interview with UT Austin. My host, Matan Ires, had sent me the details of what to expect. And it was very helpful in preparing for it. The pre-interview there was with a small group of faculty members, not necessarily the recruiting committee. And it was structured around 4 high-level topics, I would say. First one was research, existing, future directions. Second one was about discussing the fit between UT Austin and I from both teaching and research perspective. Third was about diversity and inclusion that I care deeply about. And finally, there was some time left for me to be able to ask any questions. I think it was planned to be about a 45 minutes Zoom call.
Okay, that's rather long actually, right? Were your other phone interviews also that long or shorter?
Oh, there was no phone interview. This is it was so the initial it was just email giving me an informal text from Matan and then a formal text that was sent kind of to everyone they were inviting for a pre-interview, just to make sure that it's standard email that goes to everyone. And I liked how organized it looked. So these 4 categories, I knew what to expect in those. So there was no phone call. This was just a 45-minute Zoom call as a pre-interview.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And your other Zoom calls or screening interviews, were they also similarly structured, or were there like major differences?
So all the Zoom calls, most of them, I would say, there were Zoom calls. There's probably 1 phone call. That's all. Everything else was a Zoom-based pre-interview, and it ranged between 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And most of the places did give me an agenda in some sense that this is what we would like to hear. And I would say it was similar, although some of the questions dealt with, if you have kind of struggling student, how would you deal with that student? That kind of a thing also came up in pre-interview. So having given me a chance of like, this is the kind of thing to expect was good, because I could think about those situations, pull out examples of how I have done that in the past, if at all. Was very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and after your phone interview, you received a full invitation or invitation for a full visit at UT Austin. Can you tell us a bit how this visit looked like?
Oh yeah. So the full interview took place virtually. I think that was given. My talk was on day 1, and the interviews happened on day 2. After my talk on day 1, Matan, my host, did chat with me. Where he gave me an overview of the visit the next day, the schedule, who I will be meeting, and answered any questions I had. I really found this very helpful, actually. Now I think of this as, obviously, this is something everybody should do, but wasn't something that I got to do everywhere. I got nicely familiar with the schedule a day in advance of the actual interviews. So day 2 then was filled with meetings with faculty members. Matan did ask me if I would be okay with more than 1 faculty member in every meeting, because that would give me a chance to meet with more faculty members. And I said, totally. So that's what they were. Most of them were with 2 or more faculty members, except for the one with Diana, the chair, which was one-on-one. And most of them were 30 to 45 minutes again. One of the meetings was with recruiting committee, all of them together. And I also met with graduate students in a separate meeting, and then also undergraduates in a separate meeting. And the day ended with a social hour.
I see. And for this recruiting committee meeting, how many faculty members were there? 1 second. How many faculty members were there approximately involved, and how did this look like?
3 to 4 actually were there in the meeting, and this meeting they recorded because I think one of them couldn't show up, so they wanted to. One of them couldn't make the meeting, so they wanted to record and make sure they could, that person could catch up with what was discussed in that meeting. If I remember correctly, 3 to 4 faculty members were there.
I see.
Yeah.
And this meeting where you met 2 faculty members at the same time, how did this influence on what you chatted about? Because I imagine if you have a one-on-one meeting, you can always prepare for the research of the other person you will be talking to, but 2 at the same time, it might be more tricky, right?
Yes, actually, intuitively, this is what I felt too. But Surprisingly, it went really well. And I give a lot of credit to Matan for putting together this schedule, thoughtfully combining, grouping people. Already it's hard to sort of make sure your schedule works, right? From, from his point of view, getting people the slots that work for them. And now you're trying to put multiple professors together on a meeting slot with me. So it was amazing, actually, in that sense. It flew so well. It felt very natural, organic kind of discussion that just happened. With research, we were able to nicely find connections with each other's research. So it felt like, he had put in a lot of thought in putting those two people in that same slot to talk to me. But later he actually mentioned he did not put that much thought. So actually, it was amazing. I think that's I think one thing that I really loved about this whole interviewing experience, right? Got to chat with such amazing set of people who are excited, passionate about what they are doing, and passionate about hearing what I'm doing, something ready to learn from each other. I think that was the core of it, that made it flow really well.
I see.
Yeah. I actually also just remembered that what I liked at UT Austin was that they also arranged a separate meeting later, actually, not on day 2, but later, with female faculty members across the Cockrell School of Engineering at UT. And this, I was specifically told, was offered to female faculty candidates, and did not have any impact on their decision making. So it was a great chance for me to be able to ask as many questions I had about the culture at UT for female faculty members, their experiences, how they felt, whether they felt heard, and all that, anything. It was raw, and I could just chat with them. It was really amazing. I think that was something I really liked about UT, and has played a great role in sort of my decision making.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. And I guess that's also something that institutions could take away from this interview, hopefully. And I mean, we already chatted a bit about interviewing while being pregnant. While arranging this or other visits, did you ask for any accommodations?
So actually, the fact is that I did not let anyone know about my pregnancy while I was interviewing. I did not see the need, to be honest, especially given that this was all happening virtually to start with. I did not have to travel. That was going to be a real challenge. So having this happening virtually was real enabler for me, I think. I definitely had consulted with my OB regarding the interviews. I explained to her the whole process, how hectic the schedules might get. And she had confirmed that I could do that. It should be fine, she had said. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And so I did not want to have anyone make any special arrangements for me. The key thing, as I also alluded earlier, was the schedule, the scheduling aspect of it, scheduling them with keeping my OB visits in mind. And sometimes you have just like, extra ones coming up depending on how you're doing being pregnant. So what helped was the OB visits were pre-planned, but the interviews were more unpredictable, as you know. So waiting to receive the invites for the pre-interview, then the full interview, and the bonus was trying to sort of get the order of interviews that you desire, right? You always want some kind of order in your interviews. So this was really challenging, scheduling that, but I'm glad it worked out in the first place. But I had to be really, really organized, very organized with keeping my calendar updated. And that was the way I avoided getting stressed about it, double booking myself, or then having to go back and forth with schools are also trying to do their best to sort of give you the best time that works for you, as well as other candidates that they're working with. So, I mean, if one is looking for advice, I again highly recommend spending time on, getting organized, using calendars or any such tools that you find, even planners or bullet journaling. I don't know, anything. All these tools are really, really helpful, particularly during the interview season. Some interview schedules look more hectic than others, in terms of breaks, how they were spread, and how meetings ran over the allotted time, as it happens sometimes. Especially not getting a bathroom break or getting real short breaks in the third trimester was brutal. But then I asked for it whenever I needed, and I had to time them to be at the end or right at the start of any interview, though. So if I did not, then the 30 minutes would be brutal. So there was always this additional thread running in my mind as I was interviewing. My last interview actually was in the 9th month. And it was really getting to starting to get really hard at that point. Some interviews were spread over 3 days actually, and each meeting was 50 minutes to an hour. So many, many more meetings overall in those 3 days. So I had to be upfront, I think, about asking, speaking up, and asking for breaks when I needed them. And people are generally nice. I did not have any issues on asking for breaks. They were granted very easily, very nicely. I think one good thing was about, getting quiet moment though, without having to move, just by turning off your camera for a couple of minutes, which I believe would have needed me to go to a restroom for an in-person visit, and movement was becoming harder at that point. So definitely, once again, having this virtual environment was very helpful.
Okay. Did you have any strategy? For example, did you try to only have a single visit every week, or what was like the frequency of visits for you?
Actually, I tried ideally to have one interview per week, given that most of these were now spread over 2 days or at times 3 days to allow time to recover from Zoom fatigue. Some of it worked, but I did end up having, I think, at least a couple of weeks where I had more than one interviews. I tried to get initial ones at least one per week. So I got time to work on the feedback I got. I got time to think deeper about the questions I was asked. After the initial few interviews though, the amount of work I needed to put in preparing for the next ones, in terms of changing my job talk slides or making tweaks to what I was saying, reduced significantly. So the 2 interviews in a week became feasible after that. And honestly, given what I was doing, all that it was, I actually used all the time apart from interviews to relax and re-energize. Well, I ate well thanks to my husband and slept well, as well as I could, well, given the frequent bathroom visits at night. So I didn't necessarily prepare much in terms of technical content in between interviews. I spent that time to I got to get familiarized with the schedule and ponder over the work of the faculty members I was going to meet. But that's about it. I did not prepare a lot in terms of technical content, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned also your dancing before, and I forgot to mention for the audience, I will also link in the description of the video to your personal website where you have some nice photos also, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. And talking about interviewing, so were there any questions that you received that were unexpected in some way? So not only at UT Austin, but in general?
Well, no, not really. But I think there were a few times people asked me if I were married, had any kids, with all good intentions, of course, I would say, to help me see how good the school, city, town is in terms of, schools for kids, or to share anything that they may have, they like doing with their families in the city or town. So not really uncomfortable, as I actually didn't mind sharing that I'm married, and those things were fine. But this is something one has to think about, and I think keep an answer ready to avoid getting caught off guard during an interview. So just that. No other surprising or uncomfortable questions as such. I was just honestly really surprised with the generous amount of time faculty members were spending talking to me, answering every question I had, like it was the greatest question one would have asked. So that was really positively surprising element in these interviews.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what about deciding? So what did you do after you received your first offer?
Well, smiled really broadly, jumped in my mind, given that I couldn't really jump at that time, and told myself, I'm going to be a professor, really just that.
I see. And subsequently, did you also, for example, reach out to other institutions after celebrating?
Well, so I took into account the deadlines that were given to me. I was kind of working in a lockstep fashion, I think, because not everybody was making decisions at the same time, as it is the nature of this interviewing process, I think. So whenever I really needed to talk and ask whether there was a decision for me because of the given deadline approaching, I mentioned, because I actually applied to places, as I said, where I was sincerely considering going to. So it mattered to me to know what they were thinking, if there was going to be a decision. And accordingly, I then reached out to wherever I had heard from about getting some extension in case that was helping me make a decision. And once again, people were really nice in making accommodations in terms of granting me that extension, and also trying to speed things up to get me a decision. Both fronts, it's been really, really surprisingly amazing how it worked.
And then how easy or difficult was it to make a new decision?
Oh, well, I did receive a few more offers, thankfully, after the first one. And yes, the decision was not easy. Again, mainly because, as I said, I only applied to schools that I was seriously considering. But I think in this case, it's sort of having a difficult decision making is a good problem to have in this case. Overall, I also had gotten to meet with an amazing set of people through these interviews that really made it hard to decide which way to go. I think the initial considerations, I would say for me, were how the interview made me feel. I know it's really hard to explain what that is, the gut feeling, how I felt about the people, how good I felt about the fit, the culture of the department, proximity to industry. That's probably easier one to gauge. Students, how happy the current students were, and how feasible it seemed it was to attract good students, and how happy the female faculty members were, how collaborative the environment was, and how tightly knit the community of assistant professors seemed. Anything and everything about these I could gather was very important, and I took that into account very, very sincerely. Spent time walking, talking to myself, doing these things. I think the other equally important consideration then was whether my husband would find work, and would we be willing to raise our family in the given city, town. What did it mean culturally for us? As I told you, I'm a Kathak dancer and educator. So it really mattered to me to know how rich the city or town culturally was. Those were the things. I think that made it sort of principled in some say, or systematic decision-making process for me in making decision about this. Yeah.
And you mentioned your spouse. So was there also, like, did you receive any help from the university also with the job situation of your spouse?
This was definitely offered, but I don't think we will need this. So we haven't yet made any arrangements since I've deferred for a year. He's a software developer, so I made sure that he will have options while I was making the decision, right, about the city, and decided which offer to accept accordingly. So I'm hoping it should be fine when the time comes.
And you also mentioned that you were talking a lot with a different faculty. So did you do any second visits?
So no official second visits. This was happening really close to my estimated due date, right? So I was also trying to make decision as quickly as I could, and definitely couldn't travel. That was out of the question, right? But I was reached out to by many faculty members offering help to answer any questions or anything I wanted help in making a decision. And that was really, really warm, you know, while I still wanted to make my decision without getting influenced or biased. I definitely requested a few faculty members to chat a bit more about living in the city, buying a house, etc. And I also reached out to my friends, not just the faculty members, but also friends who are living in the city, you know, and working elsewhere. One thing I would say was what I did subtly was that I observed how the faculty members talked about their kids, you know, during social hours. Given that I hadn't mentioned about my pregnancy, there was no discussion about, you know, what that meant, you know, raising a kid in the city. Since this was all virtual, though, I even actually got to see their kids sometimes making appearances in the video and how the faculty members handled those situations. It can tell you a lot if you are really observing. So, but that was it. Nothing specific. I did ask about all those other aspects, you know, anything else. It was really just all those aspects that I mentioned, you know, how good I felt the fit was, how good the community there was of the professors, how well I thought I could thrive as a professor, making impact on building the next generation of researchers and engineers for that matter. Yeah.
See. And also as a young mother, when you mentioned that you didn't bring up your pregnancy, but are there like any things that you paid attention to, let's say in checking kindergartens or like other relevant institutions? I'm not sure. I'm inexperienced, so.
You know, just being really getting introduced to this whole world of parenthood, I would say, a new mom, and I'm still trying to, this is overwhelming. Very happy, but exhausting kind of a phase I'm in. So I wouldn't pretend to know everything I should have asked for. But as I said, for me at that point, it was enough to sort of get to observe how particularly the social hours were really amazing opportunity to do that. I literally got to see their kids, their interactions. Their spouses were sometimes in the on the Zoom call, and it tells you a lot. I think I go a lot by my gut feeling. I believe that. So I did not ask particularly. I saw when I got a chance to talk to female faculty members, I did ask them whether they had to make a choice, any compromise in terms of choosing motherhood versus career, or if they already mentioned some way about their kids, or in any of the other questions. I was then sort of going deeper into what kind of challenges that did that have, and got to learn a lot of advice, good advice, I would say, was there.
And then before accepting the offer, did you also negotiate?
I did negotiate on two things, I would say. The start date, just because I wanted to have some time to spend with my daughter to start with, but also I wanted to start after getting a bit more re-energized after this whole, PhD, then postdoc. I wanted to take some time and then start. And the second thing was the startup package to suit mine and my prospective students' research needs. But that's about it. Since I had already deferred by a year, my tenure clock will only start next year. And I think, I don't know. Yeah, I did not negotiate anything more than that as a young mother. It was, I'm going with an open mind, as I said. It's going to be a whole lot of new learning, and I'm ready to learn on job on both aspects. So I have to be both a good teacher as well as a good student in that aspect. And I'm ready for that. I'm sure with the good environment that UT Austin is offering, and I think good set of mentors that are already getting sort of set up for me, it should be feasible to do this, to learn on job. I'm hopeful.
So, sounds like an exciting and challenging road ahead.
At the same time, yes.
Yeah. I guess we talked about the main phases of the interviewing process and decision process. So I would say let's wrap up with a couple of questions. Namely, first, are there any memories that particularly stuck with you from the whole process? I mean, you already mentioned, I guess, some like the social hour, but did you also have any additional ones that you wanted to mention?
A lot of memories come to mind, but I would say, let me not take a specific memory, but I think people in general. I think I alluded to this earlier also. You know how busy we think we get as grad students, tend not to have any time for anything else. And given that sort of context in mind, I was positively overwhelmed to find faculty members, grad students, undergrads take generous amount of time, honestly, to talk to me during and after my visits. The kindness they showed was really something. It was moving. I mean, I got to chat with the brilliant minds who are passionate and about impacting students, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, some of the questions I had asked were taken very, very nicely, to an extent that people actually contacted me later saying that I actually thought over this question you had asked. It was a really good question, and I have more insights. Would you like to chat? This was not any strings attached or anything, but people took that much time actually to think about it. And that's why I think the whole experience in the end was something I would say I have enjoyed because of all this thing. The questions I was asked was also amazing. It gave me a lot of clarity on many things. The simple question of why do you want to be a professor? It makes you think a lot and centers a lot of attention, and makes you more responsible going forward. A job in academia, as I said earlier also, has a lot of power. And yeah, I definitely was in a way, I wouldn't say scared, but overwhelmed by that I wanted to make sure it's not just me now, in picture, but the whole next generation in some sense can be impacted with things I do. So this helped, this whole interview process, I would say, starting with writing your statements, understanding what those statements are, why are they asking this, was really nice in that sense. I learned a lot.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
I mean, I'm glad I'm able to say that after all the stress, right? It's very hard. I know for people preparing right now, it may seem like I'm just saying this for the sake, but no. I hope you all feel that after the interview season is over.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. No, joking. Yeah. Yeah, do you also have any kind of thoughts that you want to share about like reconciling basically the challenges as a young mother, basically raising a child and also being a professor at the same time?
I received a lot of advice, and you generally do that as a new mother, as somebody pregnant, you keep receiving a lot of advice. So once again, I'll say a few things probably, but that I found useful out of the many suggestions, comments I had gotten. But I would say be wary of advice that you get. Pay attention to what agrees with you. But with that, I would say I would like to say three things that helped me. One was from my OB, and these are not like particularly quote unquote good thoughts or inspiring thoughts of any sort, but something that helped me. She was like, I was talking to my OB. She was great, thankfully. And I was trying to pin down every last detail of everything, when can I do this and that? And it was like getting obsessive over that organizing that I had mentioned. That was the other extreme I was going to now. And I was asking her if this could work at this time, of this day, that would be week this and day this for me in my pregnancy. And so she was like, take a breath, and you're smart. And you have shown that by being here, right? You've done everything you've done in your life. So you will figure it out when time comes in the future too. I think this is such a simple thing for someone to say, but that made an impact. That gave me a lot of confidence, and I held on to that. The second thing I would say is be organized, plan and prepare for things. People told me, some of my mentors did tell me that success, I think, has a greater chance with preparation, and then about being a mother on top of being on a tenure track assistant professor. This was something, a raw advice that I thought was really necessary for me to hear. Prepare, organize, plan well, and then be unapologetic when it comes to the needs of your child. Do not compromise there. So this was like a really nice raw advice, I felt. And the last thing I would say was very practical, I think. You will have to learn to let go of obsession of perfection and choose progress over it. I mean, given a lot of time, I think I'm already starting to see that, you cannot obsess over every last detail of how you want to be prepared and ready for something that's upcoming, but you want to make sure that things just make progress with whatever amount, with every step you're taking. That's the only way to gracefully keep making progress and keep moving forward. Those were the three things I would like to say. I'm not too much into advice giving or taking, for that matter. I'm very wary of
it sounds like great advice and inspiring, so thanks.
I hope it helps. That's all. Yeah,
I'm sure it will. It does, yes. And any other kind of advice that you can share with future faculty candidates?
Right. I already said that I'm not too much into giving advice, but practically, do remember when you're interviewing or when a school is interviewing you for a position, also remember that you are interviewing the school too. We tend to forget that, and we only go into, oh, how do I make this work? How do I make them like me? But remember, you are also interviewing and you have the right to ask any questions you have. So speak up, keep that in mind, I think, and see how that changes how you do things when you're on job market. Okay, lastly, at the risk of sounding cliche, believe in yourself. Also, again, please be wary of any amount of advice. It might even hurt at times. So take what really helps you, agrees with you. People give advice with good intentions. Sometimes that still can get overwhelming and stressful. So definitely, I am stressing this point, but definitely think who you're asking advice from and how you should use it in your own way. In the end, we all have our unique paths, right? So the metric of success we use should be unique to our own. So let's not apply that across different lives, different paths people have taken. So I think this helps me keeping in mind. It's very easy to compare, and we fall for that peer pressure every now and then at every stage. Actually, it doesn't end.
Great advice again. And perhaps as a final question, can we also shortly say hi to your daughter?
Oh, yes. Okay. Let me get her. 1 second. Look here. Look who's here.
Hello.
Say hi. Can you say hi? This is Navya. Navya means new beginnings. So,
She looks cute.
Way to new beginnings.
Okay.
Thank you once again, Manuel.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and all the best for you and your family, and for sharing all these insights again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your patience once again, and I mean it. You showed a lot of it.